Father, your word reassures us that the Antichrist will be destroyed and tormented forever, and you will ultimately destroy all the enemies, all who oppose your Son. You taught us to pray, your kingdom come, your will be done on earth, and we eagerly await that glorious day when the King of Kings will return to judge. His kingdom will never be destroyed, and we ask in his name, amen. All right, last week we focused on the last two of the Gentile empires, the Greek Empire, the Roman Empire. They were represented by beasts in Daniel's vision of future history. And then at the end of that, God mercifully gave us a reassurance in the middle of that vision that the Ancient of Days is still in control and that he will deliver judgment when he comes. So we'll pick up today in Daniel chapter 7 at verse 11 and 12 about the destruction of this beast. Daniel said, I looked then because of the sound of the great words that the horn was speaking, and as I looked, the beast was killed, and its body destroyed, and given over to be burned with fire. As for the rest of the beasts, their dominion was taken away, but their lives were prolonged for a season and a time. And if you think about the cultures of those ancient empires, you start with the Babylonians, and when the Persians, the Medo-Persians came in and conquered, those people who had been Babylonians got assimilated. They got pulled in and blended in with the next kingdom. And then later, the Babylonians, the Medes, and the Persians, they all got assimilated and blended in with the Greek culture. And eventually, what will happen is that all of them, Babylonians, Persians, Greeks, all got pulled into the Roman Empire as part of that culture. So they were prolonged in terms of their descendants, their great-grandchildren who lived on in the next beast for a time. Now the scene here shifts back to earth. Last week we looked at heaven. We saw the vision of the Ancient of Days, and now we're back to the beast destroying things on earth. And this beast is now destroyed himself and thrown into the fire. This is the little horn here in Daniel chapter 7, and he represents the Antichrist that will come during that tribulation. Revelation 19, verse 20, John tells us that this will all happen when Christ returns, that this beast will be thrown into the fire. And the revived Roman Empire, this kingdom of Satan, the kingdom of Antichrist, is declaring war on God. And it really comes to a head there at Armageddon right before Christ returns. John tells us more about that in Revelation as well. But this beast is not King Antiochus. We'll talk more about him, Antiochus IV, Antiochus Epiphanes, king of Syria. And sometimes the Bible critics will try to convince you that that's who this is talking about. But it can't be him because God's kingdom had not even been established at the time that this king died, which is back around 164 BC. Christ had not even been born at that time, much less come back for the second coming where he destroys the beast. And the Roman Empire continued to exist. It took centuries after that to lose power. So Daniel and John here, John the Apostle in Revelation, they're describing a sudden act of judgment where God comes in, does something decisive, something major, something that's clear in terms of judging and destroying that beast. Now, the thing about the little horn here being the Antichrist and not Antiochus, there's a difference between chapter 7 and chapter 8. We talked about that some last week. So here in chapter 7, little horn represents Antichrist. When we get to chapter 8, there's another little horn that does represent Antiochus. And that's where some of the confusion comes in. Back in Daniel chapter 2, we have that statue dream where Nebuchadnezzar is dreaming about the gold head and the silver and bronze and then iron in the legs. Daniel 2 tells us that that entire statue remains intact until the stone falls, the stone that was not cut by human hands, and it hits the feet of the statue and completely destroys it, just pulverizes it. So the Gentile power down through history, it's kind of shifted from king to king and from Babylonians to Persians to Greeks to Romans, but it always follows basically that same pattern. It's just a new leader doing the same type of sinful activities. But when the fourth beast is completely destroyed, and that happens at the second coming when Christ returns, then there'll be a totally different kingdom. The fifth kingdom at God will come at that time and replace that kingdom. And so we wanted to look at that beautiful kingdom now, and this is picking up in Daniel chapter 7, verse 13 and 14, the fifth kingdom of the Son of Man from heaven. And this one is a nice, rich slice of New York cheesecake, so we'll chew on this for 2 pages. That'll be the rest of our lesson today. Daniel 7:13, Daniel said, I saw in the night visions, and behold, with the clouds of heaven, there came one like a son of man. And he came to the Ancient of Days and presented before him. And to him was given dominions and glory and a kingdom that all peoples, nations, and languages should serve him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion, which shall not pass away, and his kingdom is one that shall not be destroyed. The scene here is shifting back to heaven, and it's the same scene that you'll find in Revelation chapter 5. I gave you verse 6 through 10 there. And the verses immediately after that, Revelation 5, verse 11 through 13, that is the last song in the music of Handel's Messiah, Worthy is the Lamb. So that's the context here. And this verse, Daniel 7:13, it happens just after verse 10 that we read last time. So the timing is that verse 13 and 14 has to happen in heaven before Christ returns to earth. And then when he comes to earth, he will fulfill verse 11 and 12. And this coming of Christ, his kingdom, this fifth kingdom that's introduced, is finally going to unify the world and finally achieve world peace. So let's look at that kingdom, the fifth kingdom of the Son of Man from heaven. It's going to be worldwide, so there's no barriers, there's no borders, there's no boundaries around anything. It's a global kingdom. It's eternal, so it's something that will last, that will endure and continue on, and it can't be conquered. So that's some major differences between these previous empires going back to the Babylonians. And the Son of Man, Jesus Christ alone, is worthy to rule over that millennial kingdom. Talking about clouds, I give you several verses here. When we see clouds in the Bible, sometimes it's a symbol of the deity of Christ, and you see that in Matthew 24. Sometimes clouds are used to imply that God is present, God is with them. And we see that going back to Exodus 13. We know at the ascension, Christ ascended in a cloud, and then it tells us that he will return the same way in the clouds of heaven when he comes. And I give you some verses there, the Acts chapter 1, verse 9 through 12, Zechariah 14:4. And before we leave that thought, I always like to mention that not only does he return the same way in the clouds, but he returns to the same place, to the same spot. So if you imagine that you're there in Acts chapter 1 with Peter and the others, and you're watching the ascension, you see Christ ascend from the Mount of Olives up in the clouds. If you could be there with your smartphone and take a video of that, when it's time for Christ to return at the second coming, just play that video in reverse. He will be coming down in the clouds of heaven, and his feet will stand on that same spot on the Mount of Olives. So it's a reverse video, the two events, the ascension and the return. The ascension is like a sneak preview of coming attractions when Christ will come again. And he described, when Jesus is talking about his second coming in Matthew 24 and Matthew 26, he uses the same language that we find here, Daniel 7:13 and 14, coming on clouds of heaven. The Aramaic language that's used here in Daniel 7, they don't have a definite article, so they can't use the word the, T-H-E. And so the original language there, it says, a son of man. King James translated it, the Son of Man, thinking that it's Jesus. Now, the context here, we have to look at who is the Son of Man, what do we know about it? He is brought before the Ancient of Days, God the Father. He is given sovereign power. So we know it's Jesus. King James Version is not wrong. It's just that definite article is not there in the original language. And again, it's something that the Bible critics will try to criticize, and they'll say that you're twisting it, that's not what it says. but we know it's Jesus from the context, not from that word. Other scriptures tell us that Christ is going to rule over all the nations when he comes. And this vision here in verse 14, it's showing Christ. He's standing before God. He is inheriting all nations. And John picks that up in Revelation 11. Remember that when Jesus went to his trial, he was before Pontius Pilate, and he said, my kingdom is not of this world. So it's not something that he obtains by military power. It's something that he receives. He's given that in heaven from God the Father. And John 18 speaks about that. There's a parable in Luke 19, the parable of the 10 millions, and in that story, Jesus is the man of noble birth. That he talks about this man that has gone away to a distant country. In the case of Jesus, he's gone away to heaven, so he's ascended to heaven. Today he is with God the Father at the right hand, and that he will return. And so his kingdom is going to be established. It is inaugurated when he comes at the second coming. There's the victory at Armageddon, the enemies of God are defeated, and then Jesus establishes the kingdom. But it won't be fully realized for 1,000 years, so it's going to be a millennial reign of Christ over that kingdom until the end of that 1,000 years. We're turning to the back of the handout, page 54, and we know that Jesus is unique in history. He's the only person who is 100% human and also 100% God at the same time. So we have the titles for him. We refer to him as the Son of God, and that refers to his deity, that he is the one and only begotten Son of God. He is also the Son of Man, referring to the fact that he's human. He was born of Mary. And so the theology books, when pastors go through their training, they learn about something called hypostatic union that talks about how Jesus is both God and man at the same time, fully God and fully man, as John describes it at the beginning of his gospel. Jesus is referred to as the Son of Man, the Son, and that's 82 verses in the New Testament in the ESV translation. It's the main title that he used for himself, so he would often refer to himself as the Son of Man. Now, the martyrdom of Stephen, he's the first martyr in Acts chapter 7, the first one to be killed for his faith. As he was being stoned to death, he saw Jesus in heaven at that time after the ascension, and he says, he referred to him as the Son of Man. And then back in the book of Ezekiel, God refers to Ezekiel 93 times as Son of Man, but Ezekiel was a son of man. He was like any other man. So this is a unique case where only in the Gospels, only in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, you see that term, Son of Man, and it's used in Greek with a definite article. That's the difference in the language. Greek has the, Aramaic does not. And so it's clear when you get to the New Testament. Jesus is the one and only unique Son of Man. And Jesus always called himself the Son of Man. He didn't refer to himself as an ordinary Son of Man like Ezekiel. Now, Jesus also, he's what God intended for mankind to be. And what we're talking about there is when God created, all the way back in Genesis, we're created in the image of God. All people, male and female, created in the image of God. When sin came along, it marred that image, it distorted that image, but it did not destroy the image of God. It didn't remove the image, it didn't eliminate the image. It disfigured the image. And it's something that God can fix, he can repair through the forgiveness of sin. And we can become more and more conformed to the image of Christ as we walk in holiness and walk with him and obey him. So when Jesus called himself the Son of Man, he's also making the claim that he is God. And we see this several times in the New Testament. I give you a verse here from Colossians 2, that in him all the fullness of the deity lives in bodily form. So he is God. He is in a human body during the time he was on earth. And because this is true, because he is God, Son of Man is able to forgive sins. That I give you verses along with those. That's Matthew 9:6. He's able to save lives. He's able to rise from the dead. He's able to execute judgment. All of this depending on the fact that he is God. In John 5, at his trial, Jesus says, "You will see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of the Mighty One," Matthew 26, starting at 64. And when Jesus said that, it was really the last straw, but the Jewish religious leaders had already determined that they had to find a way to kill him. But that pushed him to the limit, because they accused him of blasphemy. He's claiming to be God, as he said in John 5 and John 19. And the Jewish court condemned Jesus to death and turned him over to be crucified. Now, when we talk about Son of Man, it's referring to humility that Jesus displayed during his earthly ministry and his whole time on earth. He's the eternal second person of the Trinity. We have the one God existing in three persons: God the Father, God the Son, God the Spirit. So he has existed from before creation. There was never a time that he was created. And yet we have the fact that he came here, he left heaven, he took on flesh, he was born in the humble manger, and then he was hated, he was rejected, and he had no place to lay his head. He ate with sinners, he suffered, and he voluntarily chose to do this. So he lowered his status from being king of heaven, set aside all of the authority that he had as God, to be the Son of Man. And so Philippians 2, verse 6 through 8 talks about that some. It's just one of Chuck's favorites and one of my favorites as well, that passage. Son of Man fulfilled God's prophecy. So at the trial before the high priest, Jesus said that you will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven. And that's the Matthew 26, 64. So Jesus is claiming that he is the fulfillment of Daniel 7, 13 and 14 when he says that. And everyone on the court recognized that that's what Jesus was saying. And just before that, during the Holy Week, this is where Jesus told the disciples, he said that on earth, you will all see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven with power and great glory, at the end of Matthew 24. So 600 years before this, 600 years before the crucifixion at Calvary, God gave Daniel this vision about what would happen and the Son of Man who would come. So Daniel saw that this Messiah, when he came, is going to receive glory and worship, and he's going to receive that everlasting kingdom. And Jesus spoke about that coming kingdom, Matthew 13, Matthew 16, and the book of Hebrews. We see that he points to the Son of Man in Psalm 8, teaching that Jesus, the true Son of Man, is going to rule over all things. So the Son of Man is fulfilling that Old Testament prophecy, the King of Kings, when he returns, not during the first coming, not during the earthly ministry 2,000 years ago, but when he comes again as King of Kings. So this is where we tie in with Revelation chapter 1, and I'll read verse 13 and 14. John, the apostle, saw in the midst of the seven lampstands one like a son of man. He was clothed with a long robe, with a golden sash around his chest. The hairs of his head were white, like white wool, like snow, and his eyes were like a flame of fire. So John's describing the one who is speaking to him in that vision in Revelation chapter 1. And a few verses later, the same Son of Man spoke again. And if you have a red letter Bible, you'll see that those words are in red. It is the words of Jesus. There was the occasion in Matthew 16 with Peter where Jesus asked the disciples, who is the Son of Man? Who do you say the Son of Man is? Or who do people say that he is? And Peter affirmed it was Jesus. So the book of Revelation, as you read on beyond the seven letters to the churches, it's describing who the Son of Man is, how he is revealed to us, how he judges, how he will return, and then eventually establish that kingdom on earth when he does come. And after that 1,000-year millennial reign of Christ, he's going to surrender that kingdom to God the Father. And at that point, Christ will be appointed to be the ruler over God's eternal kingdom forever. So that's 1 Corinthians 15, that wonderful chapter talks about that again. So next week, Daniel is going to ask for an interpretation of this vision. What does it mean about all those four beasts, especially this fourth beast, the one that has the iron teeth, the one that has horns. And when Daniel hears that explanation, he turns pale. All the color drains from his face. It's a shocking thing to him. And we'll also read what is the most important and encouraging word in chapter 7 next time. So I see you then.